They said my "Welcome Y'all" sign was offensive. Not political, not inappropriate, and just too welcoming. The HOA gave me 48 hours to take it down, so I decided to make it 40 feet tall instead. The morning it all began was calm, too calm for what was coming. The neighborhood shimmered under the soft Texas sun, with manicured lawns, white fences, and flower beds lined like soldiers. Maple Crescent looked perfect, almost unreal, like something out of a catalog. But perfection hides things. It hides fear, control, and the kind of people who think power comes with a clipboard. When I moved into that house, I was looking for peace, not politics. 2 stories of quiet charm, blue shutters, a porch big enough for my coffee mug and my dreams. I thought I'd finally found a place where the world might slow down for a while. I didn't know then that I'd walked right into someone else's kingdom, ruled not by kindness but by control. The first thing I hung on that porch wasn't a curtain or a wind chime. It was a memory. A wooden sign my mother carved years ago before she passed, smooth to the touch, letters cut deep with love. It read, "Welcome y'all." Just 2 simple words, but to me, they were home. They were warmth, family, and everything she'd stood for. That Saturday morning, I hung the sign right beside the flagpole. The sun caught the varnish, and for a moment, it looked like the wood itself was glowing. Neighbors walking by smiled, nodded, waved. Some said it made the street feel friendlier. And for that day, I believed them. Then, Sunday morning came. I found an envelope tucked neatly into my mailbox, thick paper, gold seal, and the cold words every homeowner learns to fear. HOA notice, urgent. Inside was a violation letter stating, non-conforming exterior signage, potentially offensive wording. I remember staring at it, waiting for the punchline that never came. Offensive? Welcome y'all? It felt like a joke, except it came with a threat. Remove the sign within 48 hours or face fines. The calm I'd moved there to find began to crack. I called the HOA office that afternoon thinking this was a mistake. That's when I heard her voice. The woman everyone in Maple Crescent whispered about. Beverly Crane, HOA president for 9 years. A woman who spoke like she was born giving orders, who smiled without ever meaning it. "Mr. Ross," she said sweetly, "our community has guidelines. Personal signage must reflect our shared values." I almost laughed. "It says, 'Welcome, Beverly.' What value exactly does that violate?" Her tone hardened. "Rules are rules. Remove it or face a penalty." Then the line went dead. That was the first time I heard her voice. It wouldn't be the last. By evening, I noticed her white Lexus idling near my driveway. She sat there, sunglasses reflecting my porch, scribbling something on her clipboard before driving off without a word. The next morning, there was another envelope. This one said, "Failure to comply, fine, $100. I stood there in my robe, staring at it, coffee growing cold in my hand. And for the first time, I felt something stronger than disbelief. I felt anger. See, I've dealt with people like Beverly before. The kind who build tiny empires out of fear. They don't need power. They crave obedience. They live for the sound of, 'Yes, ma'am,' and the silence that follows it. But I wasn't about to bow down to someone who thought a wooden sign was a threat. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, flipping through the HOA bylaws I'd downloaded from the community portal. 48 pages of fine print, written in legal fog. But after 2 hours, I found what I needed. There were no bans on decorative signage unless it contained profanity or political messaging. So my sign wasn't illegal. Beverly's fine, though. That was. I printed out the section, highlighted the rule, and pinned it to my fridge like a battle flag. Then I decided to face her, publicly. The next evening, I showed up at the monthly HOA meeting, held in the community center that smelled faintly of air freshener and fear. A dozen residents sat quietly in folding chairs, eyes on the floor. At the front, under buzzing fluorescent lights, sat Beverly, pearls shining, clipboard ready, power radiating from her fake smile. When she saw me walk in, her smile faltered for just a second. When the floor opened for resident comments, I stood. "I just have one question," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. What part of the word welcome is offensive to this community? The room went still. Beverly blinked, caught off guard, then recovered fast. This isn't about offense, Mr. Ross. It's about maintaining uniformity. Uniformity? I echoed. Or control. A few neighbors looked up. One even smiled. That was the first crack in her wall. After the meeting, as I walked to my car, someone slipped me a folded piece of paper. No name, no greeting. Just 7 words written in rushed handwriting. You're not the first. Be careful. That night, sleep never came. I sat on my porch under the yellow porch light, staring at that little sign. The wind brushed through the trees, carrying a calm I couldn't feel anymore. The sign creaked softly, like it was whispering, "Don't back down." By morning, a new notice was taped to my door. Final warning. And this time, someone had thrown eggs at the sign. Yellow streaks ran down the wood like tears. I cleaned it off, polished it, and hung it right back up, firmer, stronger, defiant. That was the moment I decided I was done playing by her rules. If Beverly Crane wanted everyone to see how offensive my sign was, I'd give her exactly that. But on a scale she couldn't control. Because some messages don't need permission to be seen. That night I called an old friend, Jason, who ran a small advertising company downtown. How much would it cost, I asked, to rent that big billboard on Highway 19? He paused, curious. Depends, he said. What are you planning to put on it? I smiled for the first time in days. Just 2 words, I said. Welcome, y'all. The next morning, as the sun rose over Maple Crescent, Beverly's Lexus rolled by again. She looked at my porch, expecting surrender. But she didn't know yet, the real show was just beginning. The following morning felt different. Lighter somehow, like the air itself had shifted. The fear that once sat heavy on my chest had turned into something sharper, something bold. For weeks, Beverly Crane had been pulling my strings. But now, I was the one holding the scissors. Jason called around 9 to confirm the design. His voice came through the speaker, bright and amused. So, you're serious about this billboard thing? He said, laughing. Oh, I'm beyond serious, I replied. Let's make it impossible to ignore. And by the end of the day, the mock-up was ready. The design was simple but powerful. A high-resolution photo of my porch with the original wooden sign shining under soft sunlight. Beneath it, Jason had added white letters that read, "Welcome y'all. From the homeowner the HOA couldn't silence." It looked wholesome, bold, and just rebellious enough to sting. A week later, I drove to the edge of town where Highway 19 sliced through rows of old shops and oak trees. That's where I saw it, my billboard. 40 feet tall, towering against the blue sky like a declaration of war. Cars slowed down, drivers honked. People took pictures from the gas station across the road. It was beautiful. Within hours, photos of the billboard spread like wildfire. Someone tagged it online with the caption, "This guy's HOA hates the word welcome. Guess what he did?" By sunset, local Facebook groups were buzzing. Comments poured in, some laughing, others cheering, all questioning what kind of HOA would call "Welcome Y'all" offensive. I didn't realize how big it had gotten until my phone started blowing up. A local radio station wanted to interview me. A small-town news blog called it the nicest act of rebellion ever. The internet had chosen a side. And it wasn't Beverly's. That afternoon I was on my porch again, sipping coffee when I saw her. The white Lexus crept down the street like a ghost. The window rolled down, and there she was. Beverly Crane, pearls gleaming, fury simmering beneath her sunglasses. She parked right in front of my driveway and stepped out without a word. Her heels clicked sharply against the concrete as she marched toward me. "Mr. Ross," she began, her voice tight, "this stunt of yours is inappropriate. You're embarrassing the entire neighborhood." I leaned casually on the porch railing, keeping my tone calm. "Beverly, it's not a stunt, it's a sign. You know, like the one you called offensive." She bristled. "That billboard violates local advertising codes and represents this community poorly." I smiled. "Actually, Beverly, it's on private land, outside HOA jurisdiction." I checked. her lips pressed together so tightly they turned white. She spun on her heel, muttering something about legal counsel, and drove off. But I saw it, the first crack in her armor. Over the next few days, Maple Crescent started to change. Neighbors who used to avoid eye contact began stopping by. Marcus from across the street brought over a case of beer and said, "Man, you did what we all wanted to do." Mrs. Delgado from the corner baked cookies and whispered, "She made me remove my bird bath," said it looked too European. It was like someone had lifted a spell. For the first time, people were talking openly, sharing stories, laughing about the petty fines and absurd rules they'd endured. The community Beverly had tried so hard to control was finally waking up. But Beverly wasn't done. The HOA called an emergency meeting that Thursday night. The room was packed, the most attendance they'd had in years. The fluorescent lights buzzed above us as Beverly sat at the front table, trying to look calm while papers trembled in her hands. "This meeting," she began, "concerns one resident's inappropriate actions that have brought negative attention to Maple Crescent." Her voice shook slightly, and that's when I knew she was losing her grip. She called my name and I stood. "Let's talk about it then," I said. "Because if being welcoming is a crime, then maybe the rules are wrong." The room went quiet. You could feel the air tighten. Beverly snapped back. "This isn't about welcoming anyone. It's about uniformity and maintaining order." I took a step forward. "Order or control? You find people for flower colors, for lawn chairs, for wind chimes. You find me for a sign that said welcome. Tell me, Beverly, who exactly are you protecting this community from?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. One man clapped, then another, and then half the room joined in. Beverly tried to gavel it down, shouting, "This is disorder! This is chaos!" But nobody was listening anymore. The silence she had ruled with was finally broken. After the meeting, she stormed out, her heels echoing against the tile. The rest of us stayed. People crowded around, shaking my hand, telling their stories. One woman even teared up as she said, "You have no idea how much this means to us." The next morning, there was another letter taped to my door. But this time it wasn't from Beverly. It was handwritten, folded neatly, and unsigned. The message was short. "Thank you for standing up. You gave us our voice back." That same day, a local TV reporter showed up. She stood beneath the billboard with a microphone, the sign shining behind her in the morning light. "A homeowner's battle with his HOA is turning into a viral symbol of standing up for what's right," she said. Watching it later that night, I couldn't help but smile. Meanwhile, Beverly's empire was falling apart. The HOA Facebook page turned into a war zone, residents posting their stories, demanding her resignation, questioning every rule she'd written. Her responses grew frantic and defensive until she stopped replying altogether. By Monday, half the board had resigned. The other half called for new elections. For years, people had been afraid to speak. But one small act of defiance had opened the floodgates. That evening, I drove past the billboard again. The sun was setting behind it, painting the words, "Welcome Y'all" in gold. Cars honked as they passed. A few drivers waved. One even yelled, "You're a legend, man." I couldn't help but laugh. As I stood there, watching the sky fade into dusk, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't about a sign or a rule book. It was about standing your ground when someone tries to take away your right to be kind. And somewhere out there, Beverly Crane was probably fuming, watching her perfect little kingdom crumble, one welcome at a time. 2 weeks passed after the billboard went up, and Maple Crescent began to breathe again. The silence that once ruled the streets was gone. You could hear laughter now, neighbors talking freely, kids playing outside, and music drifting from porches that had been quiet for years. The neighborhood was finally alive, but Beverly Crane wasn't done. She no longer drove her Lexus around like a queen inspecting her castle, but her emails came daily. Angry letters about restoring order and upholding standards. The problem was, no one cared anymore. The residents she once controlled with fear had learned something powerful. She couldn't find them for being free. Then one Friday morning, a new envelope appeared in every mailbox. It wasn't another violation or threat. It was a petition. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "Motion to remove HOA President Beverly Crane, effective immediately." I didn't write it, but when I read it, I smiled. It was short, direct, and long overdue. Someone, or maybe several people, had decided that enough was enough. Without a second thought, I grabbed a pen and signed my name. Then I spent the rest of the day walking door to door collecting signatures. By evening, almost every homeowner had signed. Beverly's reign had ended the same way it began, with paper. But this time the paper wasn't a notice or a fine. It was justice. That Sunday, the entire community gathered in the same hall where she had ruled for nearly a decade. The air buzzed with tension and quiet excitement. People filled every seat, some standing in the back whispering about what might happen next. I sat near the back, just watching. When Beverly entered, the room went silent. Gone were the pearls and confidence. She looked smaller, her hair undone, her face pale. She clutched a folder in her hands like it could protect her from the truth. For a long moment, she just stared at the crowd, a crowd that no longer feared her. "Is this really how you want to repay me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "After everything I've done for this neighborhood?" Her tone was desperate, not commanding. From the back, someone replied calmly, "You didn't protect us, Beverly. You punished us." You could see it, that moment when the power left her eyes. For years she'd been the judge, the enforcer, the name that made people lower their heads. But now, every head in that room was lifted. There were no apologies, no hesitation. The vote was unanimous. Beverly Crane was officially removed as HOA president. She didn't argue. She didn't shout. She simply turned, gathered her papers, and walked out. Her heels clicked across the floor, sharp fading echoes of a rule that no longer mattered. And when the door closed behind her, the room erupted in applause. A week later, the new board was announced, people who actually cared about their neighbors. Their first act wasn't to rewrite rules or issue memos. It was to host a neighborhood barbecue, the first one in years. That Saturday, the streets were alive with laughter, music, and the smell of grilled food. No one worried about unauthorized gatherings or lawn violations. Kids played catch in driveways, people danced on porches, and for the first time, Maple Crescent felt like home. I placed my mother's original "Welcome Y'all" sign at the edge of my porch. Dozens of neighbors stopped to take pictures with it. One older couple even asked if they could buy a copy. I told them it wasn't just wood. It was a reminder that kindness should never need permission. That evening, Jason dropped by, grinning like a kid. "You'll love this," he said, holding up his phone. "The billboard company's keeping your sign up for another month. Free. They say people love it." I laughed. Guess we finally found something everyone agrees on, a good welcome. Before leaving, he handed me a note from the new HOA board. It read, "Thank you for reminding us that community isn't built on rules. It's built on people. You helped us remember that." Later that night, I drove to the highway and parked by the billboard. Floodlights bathed it in gold, the words "Welcome Y'all" glowing like a quiet victory. Cars honked as they passed, and I couldn't help but smile. It hit me then. This was never just about a sign. It was about standing your ground when someone tries to take away your right to be kind. It was about reminding people that rules mean nothing without humanity. When I got home, I stopped at my porch and looked at the little wooden sign. It swung gently in the night breeze, the lantern light dancing over the carved letters. For a moment, I swore I could hear my mother's voice in the wind, soft and proud. And just like that, the neighborhood that once silenced me whispered back the same two words that started it all: "Welcome home."